that's a good question. I think the worst business decision I've ever made is to not go into business for myself. Because, I was so miserable for so long and working for other people and just not having things, the way that I would do them. And it was a big struggle. So I think that the biggest part of the bad decisions that I made were because I didn't decide to go into business for myself.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I am your host of the Inventive Journey. I am the serial entrepreneur that's also the founder and managing partner of Miller IP Law. I love to explore the journeys of other people and how they got their startups and their small businesses going. And today we have on a great host. So it's her name is Christina, and she'll tell you a lot more about herself. But early on in her career, she worked for several attorneys, and hopefully she doesn't hold it against me that I'm also an attorney and it didn't take her too much. But then she transitioned over and started working with Microsoft partners. And I didn't even know what a Microsoft partner was until we talked, but it's pretty interesting. And now she's doing that as a way to do her startup and small business. So welcome onto the podcast, Christina.
Thanks, Devin. It's great to be here.
So. Yeah, well, we're glad to have you. So maybe we'll turn it over to you. And I did a quick intro, but we'll let you do a much better intro than I'm sure I could ever give and start to tell your journey.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Christina Cala. My company is Collaborate, and I work directly with Microsoft partners, helping them navigate the Microsoft ecosystem and access funding and resources, help them unlock the funding and all the things that Microsoft has for its partners. I've been in IT for about 20 years. And I started out as a legal administrative assistant for an attorney and went to work for a couple other attorneys. And then I decided, well, I wanted to change of pace. So I went to work for a technology.
So I'm going to jump in right there.
Yeah.
So you went to work for attorneys, and just being an attorney myself, did you come out liking attorneys or don't? And I've seen both attorneys. So I know there's some great attorneys out there, and there's some that you walk away saying, man, I never would want to deal with them again. So what was your experience with working with attorneys?
I think both, but I mean, I did not like working with them, but I didn't like sitting behind a desk and being basically a secretary. So I wanted something a little more challenging. And, but the attorneys, some were good, some were bad. So.
That probably describes the legal field as a whole. So good attorneys, you get bad attorneys, and stuff in the middle, and they span pretty much the spectrum.
Yep. So I went to work for a technology company, and I was a secretary receptionist when I first joined. And then they had a couple different companies. One was a distributor that distributed embedded computing boards. And so I worked there for a year, and then those two people that ran that business, the distribution business, didn't show up one day. In fact, they never came back again. So they said, hey, Christina, tag, you're it. Let's see what you can do with this company. So that kind of got me into IT, and it got me into the embedded computing world, which I really liked. So we sold.
What did tag your it mean? How did they here's
like they had to keep that company running, right? They had to keep that company running, and I was the best option for them at the time.
Okay.
So, I love challenges. So I just jumped in. I didn't know anything, but I just jumped right in and said, okay, I can do this. So our customers at that company were defense contractors. So SAIC, SPAWAR, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. So it was a great place to get my feet wet when it came to technology hardware on the hardware side. And I did that for about 5 years and got into sales of technology, and then decided to move on. And I wanted to see if I could really do sales again, outside of that environment. I thought that was a pretty safe environment. So I went to work for a company that sold hard to find computer components, hard to find electronic components. And that was like hardcore telemarketing, sales. So I didn't know what I was getting into, and I didn't like it, but it really helped me hone my skills as far as sales goes. So I did that for a little while, and then the market hit about 2008, it started crashing. And I was working for a broker of those electronic components. And so all of our customers said, hey, we can't buy from you anymore. We're going to have to purchase from tier 1 distributors. So I figured, well, I got to go get a real job now, you know? And so I was still on the hardware side. I went to work for a company called A10. They manufactured KVM switches for companies in the data center. And so I went to work for them on the OEM team, liked it, but decided I couldn't make much money. And then got an opportunity to go switch to the services side and work for a data center. And that was right about the time cloud was starting. So it was a really great opportunity for me to learn the cloud. And they were great to hire me because I really didn't have any experience with selling services whatsoever. So I did that for a while and then went on to work for a couple managed service providers. And then that's where I got into the Microsoft ecosystem and started working directly with Microsoft partners. So fast forward to today, where I realized that most of the Microsoft partners that were large always were able to access this funding that Microsoft has for its partners.
So I'll jump in real quick just to give everybody an idea. So, and I didn't know, and I mentioned, so what is a Microsoft partner kind of, you say you went to work with the kind of a Microsoft partner center. What is a Microsoft partner? I know you give a very brief overview, maybe just dive into that just a little bit deeper so people can get a grasp of what that is.
Sure. So typically a Microsoft partner is anybody who resells anything Microsoft. So I work basically with managed service providers. So companies that manage their clients' IT environments completely, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on premise, but they also manage the environment. They deploy Microsoft Office, Microsoft Teams, whatever the case may be that the company needs.
So that's kind of like, if I have, for a larger company that has the IT guy that runs the whole, or has an outsourcer that they'll come in, whether it's setting up a database or setting up a cloud system and that, you're paying that third party, but that third party or your in-house IT guy will use Microsoft. And so those become kind of Microsoft partners. And then you working at the partner center, support them or help them to interact with Microsoft. Is that about right? Or did I completely slaughter it?
Well, no, it's okay. So there's not really a Microsoft partner center, so to speak, to go work in, but there's Microsoft partners. So if you're in IT and you're selling Microsoft products, you sign up to be a Microsoft partner, and in doing that, you can get different incentives and different things that Microsoft has to help its partners grow their businesses. So that's really, so I work directly with the partners with their own companies, but work directly with them as far as what they're doing with Microsoft.
Okay. Appreciate the clarification. Thank you. No, so didn't mean to interrupt your journey. So go ahead. So you started working with Microsoft or doing the Microsoft partner thing, helping them, and then fast forwarding to today.
Yeah, I noticed that the larger partners obviously had a dedicated person on staff to navigate the Microsoft ecosystem and to help them get the marketing funds that Microsoft earmarked for partners. And it's, Microsoft doesn't make it easy. They make you jump through some hoops to to get qualified for the different programs. And then I realized that the small and medium-sized partners kind of left behind and they were leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table every single year. And simply because they didn't have the resource of dedicated resource to be able to help them access this funding. So I saw a really great opportunity to help these small and medium-sized partners be able to level the playing field and get them the funding that the larger partners are getting.
Oh, cool. So you basically, you get a walk in the door and basically go to the small and medium-sized business, says, hey, I could get you a free buddy, or I could help you get more money. Is that that's a great deal. I'll hire you. I'd hire you if I needed Microsoft. So.
Well, it's money for them to reinvest into their business, right?
Yeah.
But what's nice is the way the program works. I can set it up to where the money that they get can cover my fees, so it really becomes a partner. So there's no reason for them to not do it.
No, that's a great deal.
Yeah.
So you decided, hey, I can see kind of that niche or that gap in the marketplace to where, big companies, it sounds like, have dedicated people. They can do it on their own, small and medium size. And do you go all the way down to startups, or kind of is there a cutoff, or how does that work as far as, I don't know who qualifies for Microsoft Partners. So do you have to be a certain size and you can't work with so many startups, or how does that work?
You can be anybody. You can be just a Microsoft network partner. You don't have to resell anything, right? So, but I typically will work with managed service providers that want to grow. So a smaller partner that is really happy where they're at, or it's a lifestyle company, I can't really help them, right? But a company that really wants to grow and invest in their growth and invest in myself and let me help them build that foundation that they can, use to grow their business basically, and use the funding that Microsoft has for them. So it's, businesses want to grow, but they can be small. It could be a two-man shop, but as long as they want to grow and increase their business, then I'm all about it.
Okay, cool. Hey, and that's a lot on almost on the legal side. You're describing what I do on the legal side, the patent and trademarks in the sense, and that was a little bit, and not to divert away from your story, but that's kind of where I got in. I work for a lot of large firms, large law firms and top ones across the country. And I see that they kind of always focus on the large clients, right? So the ones that bring in a lot of money, they can give a lot of billable hours, and you kind of almost in a different area of the industry, you had small startups and small businesses and that never really got the same playing field or the same, type of service and level of service that the big companies did. So that's a lot what Miller IP Law did, almost in the same kind of things what you're outlining, saying, hey, we'd like to help those startups and small businesses. They're oftentimes the ones that are the most fun to work with, have them a lot to offer, and yet are oftentimes neglected. So I think that's just an interesting parallel kind of between what you're doing with the helping them with the Microsoft and Microsoft partners versus what we're doing in the legal industry. So kudos to you. I like that vertical. I like working with those people. So that's great.
Well, yeah. And so, what I left out was that, before I started this business, I worked for one MSP after another, and then worked for a couple other companies. I was miserable. It was horrible because it just wasn't a good fit. I didn't want to just do sales. I was just really unhappy. And so it was interesting how things just kind of came together. And in the midst of COVID, I had this opportunity and just moment where I said, wait a minute, these partners are leaving all this money on the table, and they could probably really use it right about now to have a separate stream of income or funding to come in that can help them, infuse it back into their business. And right now is a really good time.
Well, cool. And so if I were to jump into that, because I think when we talked before, it was you started it almost in the midst of COVID, decided you're going to go out and do this. And it was what, 3 or 4 weeks in when you hit COVID, or remind me the timing of, when you decided to jump in, when you decided to really make a go of this and do your own business and offer that versus when that timing hit.
Yeah. So COVID really started kind of March-ish, right when we had to stay at home. And I started my business actually technically late February, but I really didn't start doing anything with it until probably beginning of April, maybe. So yeah, so it hasn't been that long, but and it was funny too, because I was thinking about doing it, but it really didn't end up doing it until I had never.
Okay. So how was it basically being in the midst of COVID, saying, I'm now going, if I were to put myself in that, put myself in that situation, I finally decided I'm going to go start and do my own thing. I've got my business plan. I've got everything going in place, ready to make the jump. Just made the jump right as, a lot of people say the economy's crashing, or joblessness and unemployment and everything else. And so was it a scary time? Was it a good time? Was it encouraging because you said, hey, I can really help these businesses? Or you're saying, hey, I wish I'd waited. So how was that when you're kind of making that transition? And you're still in that a little bit in that transition, being a younger company. But how did that go for you? How was that as far as a point in time for you?
Well, honestly, I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about the timing of the COVID and me starting a business in the midst of it. But the way things came together for me, it was just everything was falling into place. And I really honestly had this drive to help myself and help the partners as well.
Okay. So didn't really phase you, in other words.
Well, look at, so I love a challenge. If I don't have a challenge, then I get really, really bored. So this was like a perfect challenge for me, because it's like, hey, it's make it or break it now, right? And it's a scary place to be, but when you're confident in what you're doing and you're providing a service that is needed, they feel like you need other companies, then it was just all falling together for me. So
cool.
All came together.
No, that's awesome. So, and even in amidst a COVID, things started to fall into place for you. So that's awesome.
Well, yeah. So some people will take COVID and say, oh man, well, that there's no sales, there's nothing happening, economy's bad. I think they use it as why they can't grow their business or why they're not doing something productive. Or people can look at it as an opportunity to do whatever they feel is necessary or whatever they want to do. So for me, I just saw it as an opportunity to help the partners in a really positive way that I could really give back. But I'm super passionate about helping partners. So that's just kind of my thing.
That's awesome. So if you do that and say, okay, now finally made the jump, even in the midst of COVID, got things going out, things are starting to build up, starting to help a lot of partners, starting to get things going well. Where do you see things going in the next 6 months or a year? Just can keep growing you do a one-man person or, one-woman show, you do grow the business and have a whole bunch of, other people that you bring on and train, or how do you look at, the next 6 months or a year for the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm right now having to consider how I'm going to scale this company because I have a lot of opportunity and I don't really know where I want to take it, but I do want to grow it. And business has been coming to me. So I've been very, very fortunate that I haven't had to do anything to go look for business because there's such a big need. So the business is coming to me, and I think that I'm really going to have to scale it. So I'm going to have to find other people to bring in.
And I think that's always a hard place to be in, a little bit, in the sense of when you're figuring out, hey, we need to grow, we need to expand. And because, then you always get into now, because, for me, it was, when I went out on my own and started doing some of the things, and I've been into startup business and small business for a while, I always had the expectation that everybody was going to work as hard as I would and everybody would care as much as I would. And I quickly become disillusioned in the sense that, why there are great employees out there and, they're absolutely valuable. No one cares about your business and works as hard as you do to make it a success. And so I guess I wish you the good road ahead, or good luck in the road ahead, in the sense of that's always the first challenge, is that once you get things going and now you want to have 2 or 3 or 4 of yourself to cover everything. And it's always a great problem to have, but it's still a problem in the sense of trying to figure that out.
Yeah, the other thing that I have to make sure that I do well, that is not trying to do everything myself, right? So I know I've worked for other companies when I've had other friends, I have mentors, I have other partners that I work with, to be able to give that up, to be able to grow the company is what it's going to be struggling with a little bit, I think.
Well, that's the same dilemma and journey that a lot of companies go through as you figure out how to expand. So I think that's I wish you good luck on it. So I'm sure it'll make for a fun journey. So,
awesome.
So then one question I'd have, and I think you mentioned before, so if we just say, hey, somebody that is looking to get the money from the Microsoft fund and for Microsoft partners, I think you mentioned that there was some timing, or, they refill the fund every so often and it takes a little while to get through the process. So for those that may be interested, or it would be an opportunity for what advice would you give them, or when is that timing, or how's that process go, or when should they engage you?
Sure. Yeah. So Microsoft has a fiscal year that they go by, and the fiscal year starts July 1st. So July 1st is when they refill the funding buckets. So there's $64 million that they put in for their partners. Right now, all the funding is closing until July. But when I work with a partner, it typically takes about 3 months max to get them through the process to where they can actually be qualified and become a Microsoft supplier to be able to access and unlock the funding opportunities. So, there's a lot of work to be done from when we first start working till they can actually access the funding, but it's all to be based on, building that foundation so they can grow. And so when we turn the sales machine on, we can go, right? And so they'll be growing their business and receiving funding all at the same time.
Okay, cool.
So anytime's a good time to engage me.
All right. Well, that's great. So, well, cool. Well, as we kind of hit towards the end of the podcast, I always hit 2 questions that we kind of hit on. One is, so I'll hit on those now. So the first question is what was the worst business decision you ever made?
That's a good question. I think the worst business decision I've ever made is to not go into business for myself. Because, I was so miserable for so long and working for other people and just not having things, the way that I would do them. And it was a big struggle. So I think that the biggest part of the bad decisions that I made were because I didn't decide to go into business for myself.
And I think that's one that, and I always have to laugh because, done several of these or done a lot of the episodes and talked with a lot of different inventors, and everybody has a different journey, right? And yet there's always, I'd almost say that's one of the top things that people always wish they'd done or more quickly is, hey, now that I'm doing my own business and see what, that I can do better at it, then I can control my own destiny. A lot of times it's more profitable. You can do better and it has a better sort of income and all the freedoms and the things that you're wanting. And you say, I wish I'd done this X amount of time earlier, and I wish I'd only known, or I wish I'd had a bit more courage. And so I think that one is certainly something that is a common note, and I think something that people can always learn from is, hey, if you're wanting to get into this, they're always going to be starting a business during COVID or doing, any reason. You can always make up a reason as to why it's not a good time or why it shouldn't make sense. And yet until you do it, you're never going to start, and there's never a perfect time. And so getting into it and getting it going is always I think the better decision. And if you fail gloriously and then learn from your mistakes and pick up and go back at it.
Exactly. No, exactly. I mean, and sometimes, your biggest failures, your biggest successes follow your biggest failures. So,
okay, now I'm going to jump to my second question, which is, so if you're getting someone that was, and you're kind of in this realm yourself, so you can speak to it, starting out as a small business or starting out as getting into a startup, wanting to get in there, just starting out kind of in that realm, what would be your number one piece of advice?
Just surrounding yourself with the right people that you can reach out to, that will support you and that believe in you.
No, I think finding a mentor is certainly something. I think that whether it's, and I'd almost put it out there, sometimes the better mentors are someone, I guess you can go either way. Sometimes, if you have a friend or a colleague or someone that you have a good relationship with that you can lean on and then you get support, that's can make for a great mentor. And sometimes mentors may be people that are in the industry you don't know very well, but are willing to, help out the up and coming person or the new people in the business. And so I think that there are a lot of different mentors you can find, but the commonality is mentors can be that person that, as you're going through the ups and downs, as you're finding people to work, finding out what works and what doesn't work and going through a bit of the roller coaster and whatnot, then you can have someone there to help you and support you and to give you ideas and bounce the ideas off of. So I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, and I put my mentors to the test, right? So I'm calling at 10:30, 11:30 at night. But it's the relationship. So I think that above all else, building good relationships with whoever it is that you're in a relationship with is super, super important. And if it's a business relationship, you need to get to know the people outside of business so that you can really have that strong relationship that'll last. So I think that's huge too.
Cool. No, I think that's great advice. So as we wrap up, before we do, I want to make sure that if people want to get in touch with you, if they're at Microsoft, wanting to get into Microsoft or are engaged and looking for ways to get involved with and access to the fund or anything else, if they want to reach out and get involved with you and connect with you, what's the best way to connect up with you?
They can either email me at Christina@collaborate.com, but collaborate spelled a little different. So it's CALA go to my website, which is www.collaborate.com, and it's CALA-BORATE.com. So a little play on my last name there with the Collaborate.
All right. Well, that'll make it all the more catchy, and they'll remember you as well as where to go. So great. Well, I will also make sure to keep that in the show notes so that people can easily find you. And for anybody that's looking to get with Microsoft to access that funds or to get into that industry of the business, certainly I think would be a great resource. So thank you again for coming on to the podcast. It was fun to have you on and hear a bit about your journey and what you're doing, and wish you well for the next as you keep ramping things up and keep growing things and going through all of that fun growing pains as well. So good luck with that. For anybody else that would like to apply to be on the Inventive Journey, love to have you on as a guest. You can just go to inventivejourney.com to apply for the podcast. And for those of you that may be needing help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startups, protect and grow your startups and small businesses, certainly feel free to reach out to us at Miller IP Law, as we'd love to help. Thank you again for coming on the podcast. It was fun to hear about your journey, and I wish you a successful journey as you can continue to go ahead.
Thank you, Devin, so much. Thanks.